Let me run through some weather here. I'm going to start. With the past or week in review here and where we've been. And it was another. There was some variability in temperature across the state, but in general, it was another warmer than normal week. Most areas from 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit above the long-term normals, especially as you go into the northern parts of the state. Probably the bigger story on the right-hand side here are the precipitation totals, which ranged from, in some cases, more than 2 inches in areas that really, really wanted and needed the rain here across the thumb. You can see that here on the right side, to essentially nothing. Many spots in western lower and up actually into upper Michigan as well. Central UP reported little or no precipitation during the last week. So that certainly has an influence on what we're looking at here, the current pattern, especially for the next week or so, and I'll get to that in just a second. Our degree day totals, not surprisingly, given a warmer than normal week, still running ahead, generally 50 to about 150 base 50 units, or GDB units ahead of normal. That translates to several days, to in some cases more than a calendar week ahead of normal. So phenologically, almost all of our annual and perennial crops are still ahead of where they typically are, and likely, again, I think we'll probably finish the season somewhere close to that, at least a normal type of finish for the end of the growing season, if not even a little bit ahead of normal. One interesting development last week with the Drought Monitor certainly across Michigan, was that we, despite our rainfall pattern, and especially in those areas that received no precipitation, in some cases haven't received significant precipitation in almost 2 weeks, the area of abnormally dry or D1 moderate drought in Michigan dropped off markedly last week. And again, I'm not sure of the rationale behind that, but we went from over 50%, I think actually 54% in the previous week in D0 or D1 to down to around 12 or 13% in the state, which was definitely unexpected. And again, given the precipitation pattern, well, it was even more unexpected given the precipitation patterns. But the exception to that was certainly that southeastern part of the state up into the thumb that did see significant or observe significant precipitation. But in many areas of certainly the southern half of the state or so, there's been very little in the way of rainfall here for at least a week, and in some cases significantly longer than that. And that, given our forecast, which certainly for the southern part of the state calls for more dry conditions, this is definitely an issue given where we are, even though it is getting late into the season. Alex already brought up the August 10th Derecho Event. Just a couple things regarding that. What will likely now, and appearing more and more and more like it will go into the books, is something truly astounding, at least in terms of weather and climate. And you can see a summary here. New damage estimates, new wind speeds now estimated as much as 140 miles per hour with this, and that with straight line thunderstorm winds, that is just off the charts, and especially over a large area. The amount of damage, both in terms of property damage and in crop damage, continues to be assessed. And Alex talked about this as well. The insurance adjusters are working overtime here to try to figure out and quantify actually how much damage has occurred. And of course, it ranges from minor damage in some spots to catastrophic in others. One thing, though, is clear, and this is for the last several days, the damage is becoming more apparent with time, and it's going to be a difficult situation for many growers. 90% of the crop in Iowa, for example, was insured. So that's a more positive thing for the growers, but the problem is that it's very difficult to quantify those in-field losses, and in some cases the growers are being told that they'll probably have to destroy the crop, which has its own challenges it may be told under. But right now, from satellite and from the in-person visits to fields and assessments, the crop is yellowing very, very quickly, and it's becoming more, it's becoming easier to see where the damage has occurred. But this is very, very, very unusual over such a large area. That's clear to see, and how much ultimately there of an impact there is on the production. Still, it's an incredible, it's a mystery, but it's unfolding, and probably unfolding slowly with time. So move on from that. Hopefully we won't see anything like that again in a long time. As we look ahead here, there are, and we've had a one-size-fits-all type of forecast opportunity here for a long time, with much of the state under similar conditions. But this week, and actually maybe 2-week period, is quite a bit different, and we are going to be looking at a major forecast difference between the northern and southern parts of the state, and actually the region. The reason for that, look no further than the jet stream, and this is a map of jet stream conditions, the middle and upper part of the troposphere here down below, and Michigan's right here. And what you can see with this is an unusually amplified jet stream pattern for the late summer. And by amplified, I mean there's a lot of north to south flow, a lot of big ridges and troughs. That's something we see typically in the cold season, the winter, fall, the spring, but not so much in the summer. Typically during the summer, the jet stream moves generally zonal west to east across North America, and the main storm track, of course, is at its northernmost extent during the year, typically up in southern Canada. And we still have that main branch of the jet stream here, just off into southern Canada, but we've also got this big trough over the eastern part, central and eastern part of the U.S. So very, very atypical situation. And I guess the point is here, ultimately, Michigan's in between these two troughing features, and it's meteorologically, you can think of almost as a no man's land where not as much goes on. And one issue here is that it definitely we are looking at typically a drier than normal pattern, at least for the near term future with this. And temperatures are going to vary greatly between north and south, and actually weather conditions are going to vary greatly from north to south, because the northern part of the state is close enough to this main branch of the jet stream to still see some of the weather disturbances moving across west to east across, well, especially southern Canada. You'll see that in just a second. But the south is too far away and is probably going to remain dry here for several more days, maybe even as much as a week in the southern part of the state without precipitation. So as you look here at the forecast, that theme is going to show up over and over. And the exhibit 1 here is the little area of low pressure that we have this morning. You can see up over Lake Superior. That has a few scattered showers and thunder showers associated with it. You can see that on the radar time lapse here. There's some activity moving across the state or the straits area into the far northern lower. That will remain up north. And while we will see, again, a chance for threat for continuing showers across the UP and into the extreme northern lower, the rest of the state will remain fair, warmer, and dry. And that's so it's a huge contrast. A lot of that is because we've got high pressure here, you can see, to our south, and that's the reason why the southern part of the state is remaining dry. By tomorrow, very, very little change. You can still see that boundary up across the northern part of the state with a continuing threat of showers up north, more dry weather expected south, and then again, almost a broken record here for Saturday morning, the same deal. So almost a daily chance for rain in the far north and warm and dry conditions in the south. And one other theme here in the forecast that I should bring up, it will be noticeably warmer today across central and southern parts of the state in pretty much full sun. There'll be a few clouds, but it will be fair and dry. But our temperatures are going to be increasing back up to above normal levels, or significantly above normal levels. Some cases the mid, even the upper 80s for highs, versus the 70s in the far north where there's clouds or a little bit of rainfall. Low temperatures are going to be warming from the 50s, which is where they've been over the last few days, back up into the 60s in the south. So again, big differences from north to south across the state. The other issue in terms of especially those areas that have been missed by precipitation and are drier than they should be at this time of the year, we are looking now. It looked initially in the southern part of the state like we might have a chance for some rainfall late this weekend, maybe Sunday, Monday timeframe. As time goes on, that's looking less and less likely. And now the official outlooks are calling for dry conditions here for almost a solid week into the middle of next week. So if we don't see any showers, and right now it would be scattered or isolated at best for the late in the weekend, but beyond that, maybe the Wednesday, Thursday time frame of next week for the next precip, a better chance it looks like for not this weekend, but the weekend following it. So a long stretch of dry weather. Temperatures will remain at or in the southern part of the state probably above normal. So one of the other issues here is this evapotranspiration. I'll get to that in a second, but the rainfall totals for this next week, you can see range from as much as an inch in the northern part of the state with an almost daily chance. So not really heavy rains expected, but a lot of chances for rainfall, down to less than a quarter of an inch or basically dry as we get to the southern part of the state. So again, big differences from north to south. I mentioned the reference potential evapotranspiration rates, big changes, big differences north to south with those as well, ranging from as little as about 0.12 of an inch per day in the far north to 0.2. And that's something we haven't seen much of this year. Again, it's generally been much closer to that. But these values here in the southern part of the state are significantly above normal, or higher than they typically would be at this time of the year. And that reflects, again, the warm, dry, sunny forecast, which we have for, again, a lot of the state in the southern half. Medium range forecast guidance does suggest some changes, and it's interesting to note the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks are in somewhat of agreement, but there's one major exception. You can see in our jet stream flow expected here as we get towards the end of the month into the beginning of September, ridging out over the far western part of North America, and then a broad trough across central and eastern parts. And that particular upper air situation is going to lead to, I think, more differences from north to south across the state. And what you have in terms of mean temperature is the likelihood of maybe cooler than normal temperatures in the north, transitioning fairly quickly to warmer than normal conditions as you move south across the Great Lakes region into the Ohio Valley. And exactly where that area sets up, I think, is still a little bit unclear. So the highest likelihood of the cooler than normal temperatures will be in the north, but in the south, even though this one indicates cooler than normal temperatures for this time frame, I think there's still a chance we could be warmer than that at that point in time. The other big story here with the medium range is it does suggest both 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are suggesting more frequent chances for precipitation, certainly than what we've had here recently, and they put us into an above normal precipitation scenario. So there is a likelihood of more water, more precipitation coming here towards the end of the month in early September, at least for the time being. But again, I think there's going to be a sharp cutoff from north to south, just like what we have right now. Wouldn't be surprised if that pattern continues. So summarizing here again, just depends on location where you are. An unsettled pattern if you're in the north with almost daily chances for rainfall, contrasted with warm, dry, sunny conditions across the south, and that we're likely to be there here for the next several days. We are going to be warmer than normal, definitely especially across the southern part of the state with higher than normal water usage. But as you just saw, the medium range forecast guidance is suggesting some changes as we get towards the end of that last week of August into the beginning of September. And with that, I'll wrap up here and introduce our next week's speaker. Next Thursday's virtual breakfast, we're going to be seeing, some of the changes in the season. We'll have Dennis Pennington with us to talk about wheat planting and thinking about fall fieldwork activities, to start to talk more and more about that. So don't miss that here coming up next week. And with that, I will wrap up.
If I may ask some questions to Dr. Andreas, could you explain the determination of the PET rates? Is it on bare soil evaporation, or is it when the corn is canopied and there's a lot of leaf, and so there's transportation of moisture through the plant leaves? How does that work?
Good question. This is actually it's that's left up to the user of the data to add in that information about where the crop is, because obviously that changes a great deal. So the rates that I have here are essentially the atmospheric demand. It's a generic. It assumes, those rates assume it turns out to be a 4-inch grass-covered level surface with no shade and no limitation of water. And that's the actual value that we have, that 0.12 to 0.2 that I gave today. That's what you would see if, or at least theoretically over the week, the forecast for that surface. And I guess the objective then for the user is to say, well, I have a corn crop right now in late fill stage, and typically there's a ratio. It's from 0 to 1 and some actually go for corn, actually goes above 1. But right now, the rates for corn at late fill are probably somewhere on the order of about 1.0 or 0.95, that of that theoretical maximum. So there's a two-stage process. So the values that I actually give are a generic overall, and it's based completely on atmospheric demand, based on the sunlight, the air temperatures, humidity, and wind. Those are the 4 weather variables that go into that. And so it's left then to the user to say, for this particular crop I have right now at this particular phenological stage, this would be the value for that particular crop on that day. So it still has to be converted for that crop. Does that make any sense? It's sort of a two-stage answer.
Yep, nope, that makes a lot of sense. Where do we find these rates or factors that we adjust for? Is it published somewhere?
Yes, actually, and I don't know if Lyndon Kelly's on the call or Steve Miller in Biosystems Engineering, but there's and actually that is who tracks this operationally on a regular basis here. And it's a number of tables, but it's actually pretty easy, simple to look up. That there definitely is information on that, and I can help you with that as well if you need. But Steve Miller and Biosystems Engineering or Lyndon Kelly, that this is done on a regular operational basis and use of those numbers. So they are readily available.
If it would be possible, would you mind next week having a slide with a web address where we could go to?
Absolutely. I'd be happy
Thank
to.
you. Thank you very much.
Sure.